as I visited Grant a few times in the hospital, and it just brought back to mind the fact that he loved to tell a story. And as his pastor, you know, the expectation is that you ask the individual how they're doing spiritually. And I think it was 2 hours later, after he told me this story and that story, and finally I had to go, and different things had happened, that he finally kind of said, as I was ready to go, oh yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. So you can all relate to that. Well, as I said at the beginning, we wanted to give you opportunity as well to share some of your stories. And I know our time is limited, as Dawn just said. As you recall some of those stories, I know that Barb and the kids would just love to hear some of them, but certainly this is a time we want to give you to have that opportunity to share some special memory of Grant. We do have one of our ushers is going to make himself available with a cordless mic. If you have something you'd like to share, why don't you just stand to your feet? And I know maybe all of you know each other, but I don't, and I'd certainly appreciate it if you just identify yourself and how you know Grant or how you're related to him, and share your story. Maybe nobody has anything they're willing to share at this time, but then you can save those for another time as well. But if you have something to share, why don't you just stand to your feet? And there's someone right there.
Make sure that.
Thank you. My name is Reg Laprise. It was my go-kart that we were on the 401 with. But there are other stories before that. I met Grant in high school, grade 9, and I hope we had become best friends at that time. We spent numerous hours together doing all kinds of things that they would never let us do these days. I remember one story, again pertaining to vehicles, that Ted didn't mention. It was a Sunday afternoon, bright. The 401 was under construction in front of our house, and I had my grandfather's 49 Dodge car. He gave it to me to just play around on the farm. So we were out on the 401. Grant was driving. I had 3 cousins in the back seat. Grant made a U-turn on the 401, rolled the car. Everybody was fine. We went to told my father what had happened. I didn't hear about it until later, but we borrowed the tractor, got a chain, put the car back on its wheels, changed one spark plug, put some water in the battery, and away we went the rest of the afternoon. And Grant he was the instigator of all of this, but we had a great time. And then I remember once when I was going to school in Toronto, Grant was going to school in Guelph, and we'd made a date to meet for a weekend. And I got to the University of Guelph, no Grant. Now what do I do? Finally found that he had been admitted to the hospital because of his diabetes. And we did connect, spent some quality time that weekend. Life just carried on. It was nothing out of the way. Just this was how Grant and I did things. And then the last thing I want to say is about something that Grant reminded me last Friday when I saw him. We formed our own Ridgetown Symphony Orchestra. It was Eric and Helen's husband, Barry and John and myself, and we practiced and practiced, and I think Barry played the drums, I played the guitar, Eric played the horn. I don't know what, and I don't think Grant did either, but we had a great time. I haven't seen the video, and it's something I want to find from Eric, but this was another thing that Grant was one of the leaders in our escapades in around Ridgetown. Driving force in it, and I regret not keeping more in touch with him, but we were always in mind. He was always there in mind. Thank you.
I think I can speak now.
appreciated Grant for he would come up in the winter when I wasn't able to shovel out my driveway with his snowplow and clean out my driveway and give us a walkway from the house. He did the same thing for our grass, which this year I guess I'm going to have to cut myself, which this old fellow's not sure he can handle, but he'll do the best he can. There's another fella here that I want, if he would, to tell a story about Grant. My good brother Ken Chapman over here, when he was CEO of the campground, I'm not going to give it away. He knows exactly what I'm talking about when him and Grant were trying to build a cottage. Ken, will you tell that story? I'm sure many people haven't heard it.
My name is Ken Chapman. I was thinking about Grant a lot in the last couple of days and thinking about a word that would describe him. And every time I thought of a word, it did describe him. He was an unbelievable gentleman. He began to come to the little church on the campgrounds on Sundays, and one Sunday he approached me and said, you know, there's a little cabin for sale. I'd like to have a look at it. I'd like to get a cabin on the campgrounds. So I said, well, I don't have keys for it. He said, well, let's go up and have a look at it. So up we went, and he determined that he could get through the window. The window could be edged up, and he wasn't about to go home without seeing the inside of that cabin. So sure enough, we edged the window up, and he said, you put your hands in a cup, and I'll stand on there, and you throw me through the window. There's a bed right there. I'll fall on the bed. That was fine. We did that. As I chucked him through the window, to my surprise, I ended up with a leg in my hand. I had no idea. Grant had never told me. I was in shock. But his head appeared through the window and said, did I leave something out there? What an amazing man. And over the years, he was a tremendous gentleman who, through the difficulties of starting a little church, he never saw the negative. He always saw the possibilities. And in times of difficulty in my own life, he was there, and I would say closer than a brother. He stuck with me. Remarkable gentleman. There are no words to describe the fact that this man was one of the most Christ-like men I've ever met.
Reg, that go-kart wasn't all yours. The final drive was a gearbox out of Dad's bean windrower. Grant and Reg were in this bag, clean up scrap. Sorry, cleaning up the scrap on farms to get money to it was cool. And Grant was kind of noted for being able to make copper wire out of a penny. And I remember I used to tag along with them and we needed a set of tires for this old Volkswagen truck, and the lady that was one of the family in the mattress factory in Bothwell, she had bought a new car, and she had a set of snow tires to sell. Grant bought them for a couple dollars a piece. And of course, she only was the proverbial, only drove to church on Sundays, and there was no wear at all on these tires, but they were probably 35 years old. He put them on the truck, and we loaded up with scrap so high that, you know, you couldn't pile any more on. And first trip into Chatham, blew one to bits. And of course, he had enough nerve to take it into the dealer, and, you know, this tire's defective. So we got a new one because they were for free because there was no tread wear. And then the same thing the next week. Anyway, so there's just stuff like that you can't ever forget.
want to say that the most amazing thing about Grant was not what you noticed, it was what you didn't notice. And in my entire life, through all he's been through, I don't ever remember him complaining once. And I think he's a great example to all of us, and how you can soldier through, and just a tower of strength that we can all learn from.
My name is Marjorie Bergey Thompson, and Grant and I have a special birthday together. I can remember his birthday. I can remember the day he was born, so that means I'm older. But it was a really snowy boy day, and the horse and cutter took him part way, and we remember that so vividly. It was a bad day. But when Grant got started his birthday, his cake was always bigger than mine. We let it cross the street from each other, but his cake was always chocolate with lots of white icing. I always remember his cake being so much prettier. My name is Penny Wright, and I don't need a mic.
I can just sit down, I think.
This is, very short story, and I guess it's an indication of Grant's character. I met Grant and Barb when Graham and myself attended Westview Church. And not long after we started attending, we were invited to join the worship team. So I, joined the worship team, and things progressed on. And then on New Year's Eve, we had a party in our home, and we invited just 6 or 7 couples that we met through the few months that we've been attending. And we were all going around in a circle and telling about what we were thankful for that year and what we hoped for the next year. And one of the things that Grant mentioned, and I mean, he hadn't known us very long, but was how much I had inspired him since I'd come to the church, and how he loved to watch the worship team. And he just blew me away, and he said that I had inspired him. And the fact is, everyone knows Grant. I told him, I said, I inspired you. You have inspired me. You are my hero. You're my absolute hero. The strength of character, the things he had gone through.
I have nothing prepared, but there are 11 of us here who love you and support you, and we'll still get together for our dinners. And it'll never be the same without Grant and our chocolate pies together. I planned the menus, and nearly every week we had to have chocolate pie for Grant, and it'll never be the same. And Mary Lou made the most awesome chocolate pie. Grant was like a father figure to me. He stood by me when I lost my mother and when I lost my father. And it'll never be the same without Grant and his support and his prayers. I used to call 2 or 3 times a week, and he'd say, Grant here. And I just can't imagine calling up and not hearing Grant here. And when we were singing Grant's favorite hymn, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, I thought we could change the words to What a Friend We Had in Grant, and how we were all so privileged to be part of his life. And I thank him for that. And goodbye, dear friend.
I don't need that either. Sorry, Mike.
Okay.
My name is Charlotte. Most of you know who I am. And we have this cute little cottage that is next door to the Bergeys. And when we bought the cottage, we didn't know a whole lot of people on the campground. And nor do we have family, like biological family nearby. And I have 5 children. And at the time that we bought the campground, or the cottage, some of my kids were quite little. And it was so cute because instead of helping me unpack the car, they would run over to Bergey's, and because they were there, opened arm, and Mandy would just fly into their arms, and Joey toddling along behind, and out would come the cheesies and the chitter chatter, and after that, we packed in the car. And that was fine, because I knew that they were being fed and taken care of. And it was just so neat, you know, and the campfires that we had, and had to rearrange the wood so Grant and his cute little scooter could zip by, and just those little things that some of us would think of as a tremendous burden to have to drive one of those things. But he didn't. It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and you didn't have to skirt around issues and treat it like it was, that the loss of his leg was something bad or wrong. It was perfectly natural, and it was fun. The kids thought it was awesome to watch him get into the pool. It was like, once you get over the surprise, like he had it left in his hand. One day I was on my front porch watching my kids and the neighbor kids playing in the sprinkler. And Grant was having trouble with his legs, and he had to constantly go in for fittings and stuff. And it just shocked the bejeebers out of me, but that was Grant. He drove by in his van, and he shouted. Now, I live on a corner lot, and it's fairly populated. And I had all these kids on my front lawn, and he had his leg hanging out the window. And he goes, "Look, Ma, no leg." And there were little children, like we're talking 7 and under. And they were like, so, you know, I just thought I'd share that with you. We have lots of fond memories of Grant. And not only did he like chocolate, though, he really had a passion for Chinese food, too.
I'm the guy that put him up on the roof. I think you should know that fella. He cut the rafters for 3 trailers, 65 footers, mobile. He cut the rafters, screwed them all together, and smiled and laughed all the time. And he said to me, he says, "You know, Oz," he says, "I'm going to help you shingle that roof." And I said, "Are you?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Just put me in the bucket and put me up." And I says, "Grant, if you want to go up, I'll put her up." I think Barb headed home, but I don't know what else. But Dave was there, and John, like, we're all neighbors. We all live right together. And boy, when you think of a man that was with no legs, did more for me in my life than what I had anybody else ever do for me. And I just thank God for him. We just can't give enough praise to him. Thank you very much.